Okay, good afternoon, folks. My name is Dalton Richardson, and I'm here commentating at the Elite Game spot. Paldea Evolved pre-release. We are in the process of getting set up for round one here. Looks like we're going to have about 4 Swiss rounds today. Round one, we have a mirror match in the sense that we have two players named Josh. Um, I'm really interested to see how some of the new cards out of Paldea Evolved impact the meta, and I think we're going to be able to see how impactful some of them are, even in something as self-contained as a pre-release. So there are great cards that are releasing in this set. The biggest one, probably Iono. For those of you who've played for a long time, you probably know what Marnie does. But if you are old enough to remember a card called N that did what Marnie did, but for the number of prize cards each player has remaining, well, now you know what Iono does. And so it looks like starting out here, Josh R is going to be attaching a grass energy to his Tinkatink. I do not actually know what the name of that Pokemon is, unfortunately. I know it's part of the Tinkaton line. And it looks like he attaches an energy and passes over to Josh, who is looking at the cards in his hand. Looks like he started with a Wingull. And I can't quite see what he's benched as a result of the glare. Ooh, actually, it looks like it's a Flamigo. So Josh might be playing the Unity Wings deck, but I don't see any Murkrow in his deck as he's going through them. So what he's going to do is he's going to bench Flamigo, use its ability to go to the deck and grab another Flamigo, and then he's going to bench that Flamigo, grab another one, do it all again until he's got basically all of his Flamigo in play. But it is interesting that it doesn't seem like he's playing the Murkrow, which is sort of a thing that makes this deck work. We see the Dark Energy, which maybe means he is playing the Murkrow. And he's just going to research all of those away and put 3 Wings of Unity cards into the discard. If any of you remember the Night March deck from a few years ago, it did additional damage based off. I'm not. It did additional damage for each Pokemon in the discard pile that had the Night March attack. Unity Wings is the exact same thing. Does 20 damage for each Pokemon in the discard pile with the Unity Wings attack. So you want all of these Unity Wings Pokemon in the discard as quickly as possible so you can start hitting really high numbers with one prize attackers and really energy efficient attackers. So it looks like Josh is going to pass over to Josh, who's going to start his turn off with a Great Ball, searching at the top 7 cards of his deck, can find any Pokemon he wants there and put it into his hand after he reveals it. And as usual in a pre-release format, because the decks are only 40 cards apiece, and you have a very limited card pool to pull from, you really want to add any consistency options that you end up pulling, even if it is a card that is as underwhelming as Great Ball. But it looks like off of that he's going to evolve or grab the evolved form of Tinkatink. Um, so he's working his way up to the Tinkaton. We'll see what else he can get going, if he can get anything else established this turn. He's going to bench another Tinkatink. And it just looks like he's not really able to do much. He attaches a Luminous Energy. So if any of you have played in about the 2006 format, Luminous Energy is basically a reprint of a card called Multi-Energy, which when it's attached to a Pokemon provides one of every basic type of energy. But if another special energy becomes attached to that card, then it nullifies the effect of luminous energy. So we see Josh on the right playing Iono. Again, one of the most impactful cards coming out of this new set. Both players are going to shuffle their hands and put them on the bottom of their deck, and then draw a number of cards equal to the number of remaining prize cards they have. So at this point, both players will draw 4 cards. This is a card that a lot of players are very excited about seeing, very excited for seeing the ways that it's going to change the game. We already see it having a really huge impact on deck building in Japan. That's why Gardevoir is still considered really the best deck. That looks like, ooh, a Sandygast being benched on Josh's side of the board. But after this Iono, he's just going to swing for the knockout and take the knockout on this Wingull. Josh promotes the Flamigo that has a darkness energy attached to it. Looks like Josh top decks a Murkrow and benches a Noibat. Interesting, interesting. Okay. So he's going to attach an energy to Flamigo, and he can Unity Wings for 60 damage. That is about all he can do, unfortunately. Unable to get any more Unity Wings Pokemon in the discard pile, but is at least able to get some damage on board. So he attacks, and now his opponent starts their turn, evolving into the Tinkaton. I believe this card lets them discard a card from your hand and draw 3 with its Gathering Materials ability. Very reminiscent of Zoroark GX's Trade, Cinccino's Make Do, any of those cards that you might have seen played recently. So yeah, discard a card, draw 2, uses the ability used marker from TC Evolutions, it looks like, benches another Tinkatank. So despite the fact that he seemed to have such a slower start than Josh on the left, at least, his opponent, it seems like he's getting pretty established here, whereas Josh is sort of petering out a little bit. Josh really is going to need to get more Unity Wings Pokemon in the discard pile, and he does get one by virtue of getting it knocked out, so he will be swinging for 80 now with Unity Wings, so he will be able to take the knockout. This might swing the tempo in his favor, as his opponent doesn't really seem to have much of anything else established beyond that Tinkaton. He didn't even have another energy attached. And so we're looking to see what he's going to promote before starting his turn. He chooses a Tinkatink. And the real rub against playing against a deck like Unity Wings is that as you knock their Pokemon out with the Unity Wings attacks, that only makes the next Unity Wings attack more powerful. And we saw that play, whereas the first turn that Josh attacked, he did 60. Flamigo got knocked out, got sent to the discard pile. Now the Murkrow, for 1 energy attachment, was able to do 80 damage. This deck will probably be much more playable in standard because we'll have access to things like Ultra Ball, being able to just discard 2 Unity Wings Pokemon sort of at will. Seems really good. It's still missing a few cards that would make it really, really good, like Night March was back in the day. Um, Namely Battle Compressor, which was a card that let you take 3 cards from your deck and put them directly from your deck to your discard. Uh, it's a very strange card if you just look at it, but then when you look at the cards it was played with, things that wanted stuff into the discard pile, stuff like Night March, stuff like Zoroark GX, you wanted to put Propagation Execute into the discard pile, so that way you could propagate it and then trade it away and draw near infinite cards over your turn, right? But that might be a card that Unity Wings is missing that would really, really um, keep it sort of meta relevant. So we see Josh playing the Grusha supporter card. This is a new card out of Paldea Evolved. It says draw up until you have 5 cards in your hand. If none of your Pokemon in play have any energy attached to them, uh, or if any of your Pokemon in play, if no Pokemon in play on your side of the field have any energy attached to them, then you draw until you have 7. So it's an interesting supporter. Um, we did see perhaps maybe a little bit of missequencing issues by Josh attaching to the Tinkatink onto the bench and then playing the Grusha, but it's also possible that he might not have been able to play it regardless or play it any other way. So we're seeing what he can do. Oh, it looks like he ended up having to pass. Josh is now starting his turn looking through his deck. I believe he's using the new Arts and City Stadium card. Um, which I believe is just search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it into play. So much better than Mesagoza. Mesagoza, of course, already being played in decks like Lugia V-Star in the standard format, but that's off of a coin flip, right? So it's a coin flip. If heads, any Pokemon. If tails, no Pokemon. As opposed to Arts and Stadium, which is guaranteed basic Pokemon, but that's all it can be. It can only be a basic. Okay. So it looks like Josh is just going to be announcing Unity Wings tying up the game at 2 prizes apiece. His opponent promotes a nimble and evolves it into a low kicks. Now, this low kicks is very, very impactful because this low kicks has an attack that says if you have, it does 30 damage for 1 energy. But if you evolved your nimble into a low kicks this turn, which Josh did, then the attack does an additional 100 damage. And so some of the players at this pre-release have affectionately referred to this deck as Low Kicks Turbo, because the idea is you just chain low kicks as much as you can, so you just are outputting a substantial amount of damage in between your turns. Not in between turns, but during each of your turns. Because in a pre-release format, 130 for 1 energy every single turn can get very, very overwhelming. Now, with this low kicks, he won't be able to get the damage boost again. But we see a low kicks on the bench, or we see a nimble on the bench. He could just as easily retreat that low kicks, right? Retreat the low kicks and attach an energy and evolve it. And then that would be the game. But Josh putting more Pokemon into the discard pile by playing Superior Energy Retrieval. It's a card that lets you discard 2 cards from your hand, put up to 4 basic energy from your discard pile into your hand. So it looks like he is going to be swinging with Knockout because he's swinging right now for 7, which is 140 damage. So we promote the Tinkatink. You got to imagine if he's promoting the Tinkatink that he doesn't have the attach, evolve into low kicks for game. He's just going to attach, and oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because he's just able to take the knockout. Yeah, Murkrow is a relatively frail Pokemon. I believe it only has 50 or 60 hit points. So yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to the fact that that Pokemon actually could attack even as a basic and deal enough damage to seal up the game for Josh over here. We see his opponent Josh showing off his Noivern EX that he pulled. Um, Noivern EX possibly being the new Flying Pikachu VMAX, which says when it uses an attack during your next turn, it cannot be damaged by attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon. Didn't come in handy this game, even though he did bench the Noivern. Um, but yeah, so we see a relatively quick victory for Josh R in this first match of the Elite GameSpot Paldea Evolved pre-release. And we will be back soon with your round 2 pairings here from Cresswell, Oregon. Stay tuned. Are back here at the Paldea Evolved pre-release at Elite GameSpot here in Cresswell, Oregon. Ready to get started with round two. Both players that we have this match won their first match, so they are both 1-0. Going into round two out of 4 Swiss rounds today. We'll try and figure out who we've got on each side. So it looks like over here on the left side, we're going to have member of Team Elite Spot Grading, or Elite GameSpot Grading, Asher Campbell, who I don't actually know what he pulled out of his kit. But then over here on the left, or on the right, sorry, we're going to be having another friend of the store, Mr. Peyton Gehrig, who I believe is playing the Oblivion Wing. The Oblivion Wing's not the right card. It's not the right attack name. What is the attack name? United Wings. That's what it is. That's the one. I believe that's what he's playing. But we will certainly see how this goes. Actually, no, I believe looking at the tables last round, Peyton was playing Tinkaton. That does additional damage if you have special energy attached to it. Okay, it looks like the players are currently getting set up. I don't believe they've decided who's going first or second. At least not yet. Looks like they're deciding to shuffle just a little bit more, just a tad bit more. You can never quite shuffle too much in this game, I have learned. So while they're getting set up, though, we saw Iono played last round. Sorry, folks. We're trying to make it so that way you can see my beautiful face a little bit more, a little bit better. But that way I also don't look like I'm standing at the end of a corridor in a horror movie.
That sounds fun though, too.
We see Asher showing off his skill as a card game player by arranging his cards in the shape of a heart. I say that's showing off his skill as a card game player because he hasn't shown me any other skills he has as a card game player quite yet. He's the store owner's son, you know. I get to rib him a little bit. Oh, it looks like we see a flip, and it looks like Peyton will be going first in this game. Okay, so we know Peyton's playing Tinkaton with looks like Dark Energy, so it might be a Tinkaton United Wings combo deck. Not actually sure. Didn't see what Asher started quite yet. I suppose. But it looks like they're going to go ahead and get started here. Maybe. Yep, they are going to go ahead and flip it over. So Asher actually starts with a Qian Pal EX, which is a card out of this newest set that also seems like it'll be very impactful. So it looks like Asher's actually playing the Qian Pao Baxcalibur deck. He's going to bench 3 water Pokemon in the first turn. He's going to use the ability of Qian Pao, which lets him search his deck for 2 water cards, put them into his hand. Basically, Capacious Bucket as an ability. And then Qian Pao EX does 60 damage times the number of water energy you decide to discard from all of your Pokemon in play. So it doesn't matter where the water energy is attached, you can discard it with Qian Pao's attack and do 60 damage for each water energy you discard. So it looks like he's benched an Ice Skew. The glare makes it a little bit hard to see what else he's benched, but you got to imagine that he's benched the basic stage of the Baxcalibur line, whose name I can't quite remember at this time. It looks like, in fact, he has 2 of those. Peyton benching 3 Murkrow with the United Wings attack. Definitely not a place you want to see those Pokemon. You don't want to see them on your board. You want them to be in the discard pile because that's the nature of the deck. It ramps up damage based on how many of those Pokemon with that attack name are in the discard pile. So having to put them in play certainly feels less than ideal. Okay, so we see him shuffling up. Can't quite tell what the fire Pokemon is that he benched. It might be a uh the basic form of Skeledirge, Fuecoco. But it looks like Murkrow's first attack puts Chien-Pao to sleep. Chien-Pao flips tails and does not wake up. We see bench a art rare Magikarp for Asher. He's evolving the Baxcalibur basic into the stage 1, whose name I also can't remember. I believe it's Bartix? Maybe that's not right. But it looks like all he can do is pass. Maybe? Is that what he's doing? No, it actually looks like he's still taking his turn. He's deciding to use Chien-Pao's ability. Of course, once he is able to get the Baxcalibur online, all of those water energy in his hand can just go to any Pokemon on his side of the board. Um, Making it a really, really potent combo. We see him using the Artson City Stadium card to search for a basic Pokemon. I cannot tell what all Asher has in his deck. That looks like a Water Paldean Tauros that he has benched. I do not know what that card does, if I'm honest. That's the fun of pre-releases. You see a lot of cards that you probably won't ever otherwise see. Let's see if he decides to attach. So he does decide to attach to Chien-Pao, and it looks like he's just going to pass. See if he flips to wake up. He does indeed wake up, which of course is a little bit more devastating because it means he can be put back to sleep. Okay, let's see what Peyton does. He attaches a Psychic Energy to his benched fire Pokemon, decides to use Arts and City Stadium. I'm not sure why the glare is so bad, especially since these are matte sleeves. But it looks like he is going to finally start building up the Tinkaton line by grabbing a Tinkatink off of the Arts and City Stadium. But it looks like all he's going to be able to do this turn is still just put Chien-Pao back to sleep because he just has no way to get energy or Pokemon into the discard pile. Yep. So just going to put Chien-Pao to sleep. Asher flips tails. Oh, the devastating, which basically means Asher's not going to be able to attack this turn. What is that, Schoolboy? I believe that shuffle in if you have draw 6, if you have 6, 2, or 4 prize cards, any even number of prize cards. He's definitely looking for the Baxcalibur. It kind of is unfortunate that he had to play that Pokemon because play that supporter and shuffle his hand back into his deck because the last 2 turns he's spent now using Chien-Pao's ability to get water energy out of the deck. Now they're back in there. Well, sure, he can use Chien-Pao's ability once more this turn, or at least once this turn, and return some of those water energy to his hand. But he had to shuffle them back in, and it made it just that much harder for him to actually be able to draw into the cards he needed. But it looks like he does exactly that. He draws into the Baxcalibur. The only thing now is that he's not able to attack because he is still asleep. And at this point, Peyton could very easily and justifiably play for a deck out condition because Asher has burned through a lot of cards to get his board established. And yeah, he just does it again. He just puts Chien-Pao to sleep. If Asher flips tails, that's going to be 3 turns in a row that Asher cannot attack with this Chien-Pao, all because he flips tails on his sleep. Yeah, despite the fact that Asher's board is set up, it's very, very precarious, honestly, because his deck is so much smaller than Peyton's is right now. And so if Peyton just keeps putting Chien-Pao to sleep, I mean, it is a gamble, obviously, because there's a 50% chance that he wakes up every single turn. But Asher's been waking up going into Peyton's turn, being put back to sleep, and then flipping tails when he goes to flip to wake up. Let's see, he's going to read what the Tinkatink does. Actually, I believe that's a Ceruledge. So what that probably was a Charcadet and not a Fuecoco. But that looks like a Charcadet. He's going to flip tails, okay? This means he can't be put back to sleep. But he still has to flip heads to wake up going into his next turn. I think if he wakes up, he's in a phenomenal position. Peyton just has to pass. That's all he can do. He does what, 60 damage? I cannot see what's in Peyton's discard, so I'm not sure what actually, how many Pokemon are in the, it looks like 90 damage? Chien Pao wakes up, and I think this is where Asher is just going to run away with the game. Because now he's going to use Chien Pao's ability, search his deck for a bunch of water energy. He's going to attach them either to Chien Pao or Paldea and Tauros, and then just start taking knockouts from there. So this is what I was saying by Peyton's win conditions were very, very precarious, and Asher's not even going to attack with a Chien Pao, probably recognizes that he doesn't have to in this matchup to actually take the knockout. And is instead going to set up a bunch of other one prize attackers, so that way Peyton's never able to take the knockout on this Chien Pao. Woo! I guess Paldean Tauros has a snipe attack, so he just snipes the Tinkatink right off of the board. And so in response, Peyton's just going to have to Arts and City Stadium to search for another Tinkatink. Yeah, I mean, if I'm Peyton in this situation, I'm pretty frustrated that I can't get any of my Union Wings Pokemon in the discard pile and actually be doing major damage with Murkrow. Let's see if there's anything that he can do. He's just going to put it to sleep. That's all he can do. Asher wakes up. So this Murkrow's definitely going down this turn. Actually, probably not. It's definitely probably going to snipe the Tinkatink on the bench again. Because I mean, that really is where Peyton's damage output comes from. If its evolved form Tinkaton has a special energy attached to it, its attack does 60 plus 90 more damage. And so getting rid of that off of Peyton's board is probably the smartest thing at this particular point. Because Peyton doesn't have anything else going for him. Except this Ceruledge, but he, over the past few turns, hasn't even been attaching energy to it. So I don't think the Ceruledge will be very impactful. Yep, Asher's just going to do it again, snipe the Tinkatink, take the knockout, and set Peyton back another turn of ever getting this stage 2 into play. It's entirely possible that he doesn't even have the Pokemon now to get a Tinkaton into play. He has to Ultra Ball away some Pokemon. Looks like what's he going to Ultra Ball away? He's going to Ultra Ball away a Flamigo and a Murkrow. So he's going to have at least 2 Pokemon in the discard pile with the Union Wings attack. Which means this Murkrow will do at least 40. It still is not a great position to be in. He's going to grab what looks like a Tyranitar. Yep, so he Ultra Balls away 2 Pokemon for a Tyranitar and then uses the Arts and City Stadium to grab a Larvitar. But here's the problem. Paldean Tauros is just going to snipe the Larvitar as well. You know, there's just nothing on Peyton's bench is safe, unfortunately. But he has to have them in play in order to be able to evolve them in the next turn. And he just has to play and hope that for some reason Asher decides not to snipe the Larvitar or put him to sleep and have him flip tails. It's been working so far and it's starting to work again. So it looks like Asher attaches to Gyarados on the bench. I mean, this is still it's a pretty tenuous position for both players because all it takes is a string of bad luck for Asher to be entirely, sort of thrown out of this game a little bit. If he keeps flipping tails, he's not able to progress his boards. He's not able to continue to dismantle Peyton's board state. If Peyton somehow manages to have a rare candy into the Tyranitar that we already know he has in his hand. So it looks like Paldea Tauros does indeed wake up. Nope, it's not going to be a rare candy. It's just going to be straight into a Pupitar. He's going to attach another energy to Murkrow. I would have attached an energy to the Pupitar. Asher flips another Tails. That is 5 Tails on sleep flips this game alone. Yeah. We see Asher playing a Clavel to search for some evolved Pokemon. If I was Peyton, I would have attached last turn a Darkness Energy to the Pupitar. It's because that way then powers up both of the attacks on Tyranitar with one additional attachment. Asher just has to pass. He flips Tails again. So he's not going to be put to sleep. What Peyton could do this turn, though, is just retreat and start taking the knockout with this Tyranitar. I believe it does 20 times 20 for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon in play. I can't quite remember. I managed to glance at it while people were deck building. But I do not exactly know what the card does. I believe it will take the knockout on this Paldea Tauros, though. Actually, no. He just decides to Unity Wings, or Union Wings, onto the Paldea Tauros for 90 damage. And flip, it is a heads. So this Paldea Tauros is going to wake up. It's going to be able to snipe one of the two Murkrow. And then from there, you would imagine that Asher can just finish off whatever Peyton brings up with whatever this Gyarados does on the bench. Or I suppose you promote Chien Pao and use its ability, grab some water energy from your deck, attach them all to Chien Pao, and then discard them to do 60 times the number you discard to knock out whatever it is that Peyton promotes. If I'm Peyton, I'm thinking my back's up against the wall. I don't see a way out for Peyton, unfortunately. He has to promote the Tyranitar. He will get the knockout on this Paldea Tauros, but it would be a 3 prize deficit that he just will not be able to overcome. He plays a Clavel to search his deck for some evolution Pokemon, looking through his deck to see if there's any answers, any possible things that he could play. Or I guess it's not evolutions, I guess it's just Pokemon with 120 HP or less. So he's going to grab 2 Flamigo. But at this point, for Peyton, getting those Unity Wings Pokemon to the discard, it's just too little too late. You know? He just wasn't able to swing for big enough damage. So let's see. Nope, Ash is just going to promote the Gyarados. Superior Energy Retrieval. Grab some Water Energy out of the discard pile. He's going to grab all 4. Throw them somewhere. Peyton sees the writing on the wall and just decides to concede. And so with that, Asher Campbell moves to 2-0 with his Baxcalibur Chien Pao Water Toolbox deck versus Peyton's Unity Wings Tinkaton Tyranitar Ceruledge deck. Stay tuned, folks. We will be back shortly with round 3 here at the Paldea Evolved pre-release at Elite GameSpot in Cresswell, Oregon. We will see you in a bit. Okay, folks, we are back with round 3 of the Elite Game Spot Paldea Evolved pre-release here in Cresswell, Oregon. We're going to have two 2-0 players right now going into the third round of this pre-release. On the left, as I get their names fixed, we're going to have Andrew Van Meter. Whoops. And over here on the right, we're going to have Christian Steery. So Andrew M. and Christian S. No idea what either of these players are playing. It looks like it's reduced the glare a little bit. Hopefully, you're able to see the playing field a little bit more. We've done some in-between round physical modifications to the lights to try and make them dimmed a little bit so that way people can see what all the cards say. Fingers crossed. Okay. And it'll be interesting to see who's going first. They may have already decided. But both players are just about set up here. I'll try and see. It looks like Christian's playing the low kicks deck, the really low energy, high damage output attacker. No idea what Andrew is playing right now. But both of the previous games, we've seen some cards that look like they will be impactful to the standard metagame. We'll have to see what cards in this matchup look like they'll be impactful. Game 1, we had Iono being used as a draw supporter and a disruptive supporter in the same time. In Game 2, obviously, we saw the entirety of the Chien Pao Baxcalibur engine in full display. And it looks like right here, we're just waiting for the round to officially start. Sorry that I don't have any really insightful commentary. In a normal event, I would have people's deck lists and be able to give you some insight into how the matchup looks like it's going to play out based on the deck list. But it looks like both players are ready to go. So it looks like Andrew on your left is going to be playing the Unity Wings deck, and Christian on the right is going to be playing Pelipper Low Kicks. So he benches a Wingull, benches another Nimble, attaches an energy to his active Nimble, and passes. I think in this particular matchup, the low kicks player is probably slightly favored only because in this particular format, it seems easier to get a Nimble evolved into a low kicks with an energy attached to it, easier than it is to get a bunch of Unity Wings Pokemon in the discard. But we see Andrew is going to play Iono. We are just talking about this. Both players are going to shuffle their hands, put them on the bottom of their deck, and then draw a card for each prize card they have remaining. So neither player's taken a prize yet, so they will both draw 4. We'll see if Andrew's able to set anything else up. He's not. He's just going to retreat the Murkrow. Or not retreat, he's going to use an attack that switches it to the bench. We see Christian using the Arts and City Stadium to put a Tink-a-Tink onto his bench. I didn't quite see what card he just played. Looks like he's going to grab a Pelipper and a Nimble, or a Low Kicks. So maybe he played a Clavel. He's going to evolve. He'll be able to take the knockout. He takes the knockout with Low Kicks, putting Andrew in a very bad position. He did not play any cards after the Iono. Makes you wonder if they're just bad or if they were just something that he wanted to hold on to. But, I mean, So he at least won't lose this turn because he's able to bench another Murkrow. And then we see um, so what we end up seeing is we know Christian has a Heresy Pelipper in his hand. That will allow him to evolve and search his deck or discard pile for a supporter card and put it into his hand. It looks like Andrew's going to grab a Flamigo. We'll see if he uses Flamigo's ability to grab additional Flamigo from his deck. Let's see, he's going to, use its ability. Sorry, I was reading some cards over here to make sure that I am understanding them correctly. So, oh wait, what is happening? I don't understand why the Flamigo is going back into the deck. Maybe he decided to let him take it back, or Flamigo was not a valid target for the card, but it looks like Andrew's going to put the Flamigo back and instead grab a Wingull instead. Andrew's just gonna attach a Darkness Energy to the benched Murkrow, and we'll be able to swing for, I believe, 40 damage with the Unity Wings attack. Christian is going to draw for turn. He top decks a Grass Energy, evolves into Tink, the stage 1 Tinkatink. He's going to attach Grass Energy to the low kicks in order to use its second attack. Gathering materials, I believe. Or nope. He's just going to I'm not actually sure. Will you go out there and tell them to stop the game real quick? There's something I gotta see. Okay, so we have Daniel going out there. I'm going to go out there real quick and make sure that I understand everything that just happened because it looks to me like Christian drew cards that he wasn't able to draw. And so I will be right back. Sorry about that, folks. So everything ended up being fine. But we saw Christian ended up playing a Nimona, which let him draw 3 cards. From my end, what it looked like had happened was that he had tapped. Yes, you're good to go. Was that he tapped the stage 1 Tinkaton line in order to draw 3 cards, which is instead Tinkaton's ability. Obviously, you can't use the ability of a Pokemon that's not in play. Will you tell them they're good to start? So thanks for that, folks. Just always wanting to make sure that we keep game states as accurate and correct as possible. Uh, Sometimes can cause a slight few delays, but it's better to protect the integrity of the event than to have a mistake happen and not catch it. Okay, so we see Murkrow just going to use its first attack to put itself on the bench and do 10 damage to Christian's active. So now we have the Tinkaton in play. And we see him using the ability to discard a card from his hand and draw 3. He top decks a Boss's Orders. He's just going to use the boss's orders to bring up the Murkrow, and being able to just take the knockout right there means that he's pretty well set up. I would have liked to have seen him attach an energy to the Tinkaton before he attacked. Because if this Nimble or this Low Kicks goes down, he's in a very bad position. Because then he has to have both a Low Kicks and a Grass Energy in order to be able to win the game. We see another Iono. Iono being played. Looked like an Iono. Maybe it's not. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That is not an Iono. That's a Grusha. So Andrew is going to draw until he has 5. He's going to bench what looks to be his own Nimble. And he's just Christian. He passes. Christian just is going to say, I attack, take the knockout, and his final prize of the game. Meaning that Christian Steery goes to 3-0 with his Low Kicks Turbo Tinkaton deck, beating Andrew's Union Wings Pelipper deck. Honestly, Andrew just wasn't really able to get much of anything established that game. And Christian obviously was able to play low energy, high damage output attackers that he could stream relatively consistently. And so he just had the slight edge in this matchup, it seemed. But we will be back shortly with round 4 out of 5. Only 2 more rounds to go before we have your Paldea Evolved pre-release winner here at Elite Game Spot in Cresswell, Oregon. Stay tuned. Okay, folks, we are back here with round number 3. I'm getting some things updated here. We're going to have 2 people that we've had on stream already today. Asher will be on your left, Christian will be on your right. And we've seen both of these decks already. There we go. Everything's set up. We are here in round number 4. So we see Asher's got a pretty decent board established. He's going to be able to make a lot of evolutions on his next turn, assuming he has the cards in his hand. Christian is already on his second turn of the game. He has played a Heresy Pelipper, search his deck for a supporter and play it. He's going to bench a Nimble and another Tinkatink. He will be able to attack with this Tinkatink that's in the active if he wants to. He's going to decide to attach a Grass Energy to Nimble and then use Tinkatink's attack to draw a card. Okay, so we see the evolution into the stage 1 of the Baxcalibur line. Artibax? Frigibax? Frigibax is, I believe, the name of the card. Currently has 2 energy attached to it. We'll probably be able to launch a decent-sized attack. Should be able to KO this Tinkatink. And he has played a Schoolboy to shuffle his hand into his deck and draw, I believe, 5 cards because he has 4 prize cards remaining. He gets another Frigibax in play, and he's going to Ultra Ball or Great Ball. So what's nice about having 2 Frigibax in play, obviously, is that if this first Frigibax manages to get knocked out going into or during Christian's next turn, he still has a Frigibax that he can evolve into a Baxcalibur and then start attacking. Because if this Frigibax gets knocked out, all he has to do is evolve into Baxcalibur, promote the Qian Pao, use Qian Pao's ability to find 2 water energy and attach them to his Qian Pao, and then discard them to take a knockout on whatever Christian promotes. So he's going to promote the Nimble. We'll see if he has the low kicks in his hand. You see Christian having to read the Qian Pao again. Remember its ability. So once a turn, when it's active, you can search your deck for up to 2 water energy cards, put them into your hand. Which is what is it? Capacious Bucket. Sorry. What is this? A coin flip attack, it looks like. Yeah, so Christian has to pass. All he's going to do is boss something up, try and stall it active for a little bit while he builds up his board. Not even sure what card that is, honestly, that Asher has stuck active. But what he does have is the Baxcalibur. He's going to be able to use his ability to attach to the active and retreat if he wants to. Get a Pokemon in the active that is actually able to do damage. Let's see what he gets. So he draws 4. So what he's able to do is double attach. Now he can retreat. He's going to promote the Frigibax. And is just going to swing for the knockout. Okay. Things are very quickly deteriorating here for Christian. In fact, Christian does not see an out in this matchup anymore and decides to extend the hand and concede the game. So we see this Baxcalibur Qian Pao deck kind of just running dominant. If it gets set up, it's very difficult to deal with, especially in a pre-release format. We will have to see if that remains true in the standard format. I know this is a deck that people are very eager to see coming out of the pre-release format and going into the standard format. I know I'm going to be playing it a lot because it reminds me of old school Blastoise Keldeo, and that was one of the first competitive decks that I ever built when I first started playing this game. And so I'm really eager to see if the deck is as good as people are saying it could be. You know, keep in mind this is a pre-release format. not a lot of consistency options whatsoever. So if you're able to get set up, generally speaking, you're going to be in a better position. Of course, in the standard format, we'll have cards that will help Qian Pao get set up, like Irida. It's really, really solid. Iono as well. Just a bunch of other things, especially now that we've got Super Rod back and we have Superior Energy Retrieval back. I think that things look good for Qian Pao as an archetype, and I'm really excited to get to play it. So, folks, stick around. That's the end of round 4. We'll be coming up next with our last round of the Paldea Evolved pre-release here at Elite Game Spot in Cresswell, Oregon. Stay tuned, folks. Okay, welcome back, folks. So now we've got our fifth and final Swiss round of the Paldea Evolved pre-release here at Elite Games Spot, featuring some folks we've already featured on stream so far. But obviously they're here because they've done the best of all the players so far. So we have Andrew Van Meter here on your right, who is currently 3-1-0, versus Asher Campbell on your left, who is 4-0 with his Baxcalibur Qian Pao EX deck. Andrew, deciding to take time to pile shuffle. Don't tell Azul Garcia Griego that we have someone pile shuffling on stream. He would not be happy about it. But, I mean, based on the decks that we've seen, right? Asher playing Qian Pao Baxcalibur EX, or the other way around, Qian Pao EX Baxcalibur, versus Andrew playing the Unity Wings deck. Part of the question really is he going to be able to get Unity Wings Pokemon into the discard? If he's able to do that faster than Asher's able to get into a Baxcalibur, then I think Andrew's in a fine position. But if Asher is able to get a Baxcalibur set up, I think it's going to be very difficult for Andrew to actually win this game. So we don't know who's going first yet. We will have to see. Asher looks like he's got a bunch of energy in his hand and not much of else. So we'll have to see what he ends up starting and what he's able to do with his hand. We weren't able to see what Andrew's hand looks like, but Asher's hand, I believe, right now has between 3 and 4 water energy in it. It did look like he had some other Pokemon in play. So yes, he is starting the basic of the Baxcalibur line. He top decked another one, so he's able to at least put that down. So that way he will not get benched in this game and just has to pass. Okay, so he passes over to Andrew, who started with a Murkrow and has a benched Nimble. He's going to play an Artisan Stadium, which will allow both players to, once a turn, search their deck for a basic Pokemon and put it onto their bench. Okay. We'll have to see what ends up happening, what he ends up deciding to grab. He decides to grab a Wingull. The Wingull, of course, being able to evolve into Heresy Pelipper, which I think is a card that will see some play. If not right away in the standard format, certainly eventually, as we get supporter cards that are more impactful to actually discard. Or more supporter cards that are more impactful to get back out of the discard pile. Of course, the flexibility of Pelipper, being able to grab both out of the discard pile or out of the deck, depending on the circumstances, is very good. So we see Andrew just use Murkrow's first attack to do 10 damage and switch it to the bench. We're going to see Asher evolve into a Frigibax. He chooses to evolve the bench into a Frigibax. I think that is the correct play as well. Just thinking about, so he's just going to attach active. Artisan Stadium. What's he going to grab? Does he decide to grab a Qian Pao? It looks like that's what he was going to grab before it accidentally fell out of his deck. But he could choose something else. What is he going to choose instead? Ooh, the Paldean Tauros. Yes. He wants to be able to snipe around the active Pokemon on his opponent's board. Paldean Tauros has an attack for 2 water and a colorless. It does 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon in play. In a format without bench barrier Manaphy, right? It's very good. And so then we see putting a card from his hand onto the bottom of his deck, which was a water energy. And then he draws until he has 5. Okay, let's see what he's got. He's going to bench another of the basic line of Baxcalibur and is now going to attack Wingle for 10 whole damage. You got to imagine attacking for 10 damage doesn't seem great. So it makes me wonder if perhaps it was smarter to attach the water energy to the benched Frigibax than it was attaching it to the active. Um, who's to say? We see Andrew thinking about his options. Let's see. He's going to attach to Wingle. Possibly looking for a retreat option. Hmm. Yeah, so he's going to retreat it. Probably go into Murkrow. Yeah. He's going to use an Artisan Stadium. If I had to imagine, he's probably going to get another Murkrow and then use Murkrow's first attack to do 10 damage to this Pokemon and retreat it to the bench, and then put that new Murkrow active, hoping that it gets knocked out to then power up his Unity Wings attackers. And as I'm saying that, it looks like that might be exactly what he's thinking as well. The problem being, if Asher's able to power up a Fridge or a Baxcalibur, if he's able to evolve into Baxcalibur and has 3 water energy in his hand, he will be able to snipe Murkrow with Paldean Tauros. He's going to Artisan Stadium, thin his deck out first before playing a supporter. Smart, smart, smart. Let's see what he ends up deciding to grab. Looks like this time he's decided he's going to grab the Chien Pao. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, as long as he's able to get into a Baxcalibur this turn, he might not even need to get into a Baxcalibur this turn. He can probably get into a Baxcalibur next turn and be relatively fine. We see him benching a Fire-type Paldean Tauros, and then is going to play the same supporter he played last turn. So put a card from his hand on the bottom of his deck and draw until he has 5. We see a Great Ball. We see another supporter, a Clavel. So this Great Ball could get him the Baxcalibur. If he gets the Baxcalibur, do we see it? It looks like It looks like we don't see the Baxcalibur because you would imagine that would just be the very first card that you would grab. Oh, we do see the Baxcalibur actually. So Asher will be able to evolve one of his benched Frigibax, or his only benched Frigibax actually, into Baxcalibur, thus giving him infinite energy acceleration for the remainder of the game as long as that Pokemon is in play. So he's going to now retreat into Paldean Tauros and is just going to start sniping around this Wingull. And first things first, he wants to get rid of, he says, I don't like that Nimble. I don't want it becoming a low kicks, so I'm going to get rid of it. I think that's a relatively smart play. He could have also chosen to get rid of the Murkrow with an energy attached to it because it would have negated all the or made it so that way Andrew's board had no energy attached to it. However, I do think it was correct to go after the Nimble first because the Nimble can get an energy attached to it for turn just fine and still able to be a viable attacker as long as you evolve it into a low kicks. So now we're going to see if Andrew chooses to get out another low kick, another Nimble. If he does, we've seen Asher do this play plenty of times today on stream. He is going to get another Nimble, which is just easy pickings, quite frankly, for Paldean Tauros. And so Asher, having set up his board, is now able to use Paldean Tauros to disrupt the setting up of his opponent's board, thus putting him further ahead in this game. We'll see how Andrew tries to respond to this. He's going to attach to Wingull. He's going to retreat into Murkrow. He's going to, I think, do 10 damage and go back into the Wingull. No, now he's going to go back now he's going to go into the other Murkrow with no energy. Again, this doesn't matter. Paldean Tauros just snipes the Nimble and gets rid of a lot of his energy efficiency. Okay, so we see him playing a schoolboy. Shuffle his hand into his deck. He has 2 prize cards remaining, I believe. It's hard to tell exactly how many prize cards he has remaining. But he's going to draw 3, 4, and 5. So he's going to Ultra Ball away 2 Pokemon. He's going to go into his deck, grab something else. Looks like another Frigibax. And so at this point, Asher's just trying to thin his deck out as much as possible. He understands that Andrew may play an Iono, and that if he's able to chain or couple an Iono with a big knockout on a Pokemon, that it could be bad news for him. So he's trying to thin his deck out as much as possible, so that way every other card that he draws into his deck is relatively live. And of course, we see him do exactly what I mentioned, using Paldean Tauros to knock out the benched Nimble. Andrew is just in an unfortunate position because any vulnerable Pokemon that he benches and needs to evolve into its stronger forms is just at risk of getting knocked out by Paldean Tauros. And Unity Wings is not doing hardly anything at this point in the game because I don't believe he has any Unity Wings Pokemon in the discard pile. He's not been able to get into a Flamigo. He's not been able to discard Wattrells and Flamigos or anything of the nature of anything of that sort. So it looks like at this point the writing might just sort of be on the wall. We do see the Iono. So that will put Asher down to, I believe, 2 cards in hand. One of them being a water energy. Although at a certain point, it just shows him an ice cube and a water energy. Okay, so does Andrew end up passing after that? He decides to spinning turn. Asher attaches a Charm of Courage to Paldean Tauros, making it that much harder for Andrew to be able to knock it out. We'll see if he's going to. I mean, you just. Sure. Sniping the Wingull seems fine. It shuts off the potential for Andrew to be able to evolve into Pelipper and get another disruptive supporter and try the other stuff. So at this point, I think the game is over. Andrew just wasn't able to make meaningful progress towards efficient damage during this game. And Asher was able to get set up sort of behind all of that. Once his board was set up, being able to use Paldean Tauros to snipe his own opponent's benched vulnerable Pokemon. We will still see something similar like that happen in Standard because the Kyogre from Crown Zenith for 4 energy says discard 3 of them and do 180 to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Actually, I don't believe it's benched Pokemon. I believe it's one of any Pokemon in play. That knocks out a Lumineon. That knocks out a Squawkabilly EX. Andrew going to play a Professor's Research to discard his hand, draw 7 cards, hoping that the cards that he gets into his hand will be able to give him some sort of meaningful pivot for the rest of the game. But it doesn't look like there's much of anything that could actually bring Andrew back from the deficit that he's currently in. And he's reminding Asher, yeah, so he's just going to attack with Unity Wings, put Asher up to 40 damage. Asher will then draw, announce his attack, and that will be the game. Asher Campbell is your lone 5-0 player here at the Elite Game spot Paldea Evolved pre-release in Cresswell, Oregon. I mean, what can be said other than Baxcalibur Chien Pao seems relatively good. We'll have to see if it translates to standard results, but the way Asher was playing it right there leads me to believe that it's pretty consistent and it's got a lot of flexibility. And those decks are the ones that tend to do well because if they have the ability to respond to a bunch of different situations, that's all you can really ask for sometimes. So Asher Campbell will be your undefeated player here at the Paldea Evolved pre-release. Good try to Andrew, just unable to piece anything together. Again, that's the nature of a pre-release. The consistency options are hardly ever there, unfortunately. And for a deck that revolves around having Pokemon in the discard pile, the inability to put them there obviously makes your deck not function the way that you want it to. But good effort to Andrew. It was just too little too late to try and mount a comeback there at the end. But that will do it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in to our Paldea Evolved pre-release.
You can put on feedback.
Oh, sure. Gotcha. So we'll be back with your final standings here in a few minutes. Stick around, folks. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, I am back to give you the final standings from our Paldea Evolved pre-release. In first place at a perfect 5-0 record, we have Asher Campbell. In second place, we have Josh Goss with a 4-1-0 record. In third place, we have Grayson Campbell with a 4-1-0 record. Also worth noting, Grayson Campbell went and won the entirety of the junior division and also placed amongst the masters as well. So make sure to watch out for that up and coming player. In fourth place, with a record of 3-2-0, we had Christian Stury. And in fifth place, with a record of 3-2-0, we had Andrew Van Meter. And so very close matches, including the ones that we watched on stream today. It looks like Paldea Evolved is really going to be shaking up the standard meta. Super excited to get to see it, and I hope you all are too. If you're going to Fresno for their regionals, good luck. If you're going to NAIC for internationals, good luck. And I hope you all enjoy the Paldea Evolved format. I certainly think that I will. So that's it from Elite GameSpot here in Crestwell, Oregon today. I'm Dalton Richardson. I've been your commentator. It's been great getting to cast for you, and we will see you soon with our Paldea Evolved $1.5 thousand tournament. Have a good night.